Good evening, this is Amelia Source, and I'm going to present to you in this educational video my presentation of the brief history of translation for the subject teaching English through translation. Octavio Paz said in his book, el mundo deja de ser un mundo y se escinde en la naturaleza y cultura. Las naciones son prisioneras de las lenguas que hablan. Las lenguas sirven para comunicarnos. También nos encierran en una malla invisible de sonidos y significados. So the brief history of translation up to the 1980s says to us that the Romans were the first one to translate. And they translate what we know about history. The activities from Greek to Roman. And we have the first translation theories were Saint Jerome and Saint Augustine. The Romans brought forward the idea of translation, and this cannot carry it out for only finding the equivalent of the between words. So they translated, or the translation that they made were sense for sense. And this is meaning for meaning, okay? So they translate word by word. This came with a sentence meaning, the utterance meaning, and the functional meaning, and so on. We have an American scene also in this chapter, because we are going to see what are the more modern approaches. And we have 4 authors, and these authors were writers, and most of them were poetry writers. And the first one was Ezra Pound. And Ezra Pound was very famous back in the 1920s because he translate Chinese poetry. So this Chinese poetry became very famous in that time. And for a poet that Pound was, he know that it was necessary to translate the rhythm and also the diction and the movement of that poetry. Then we have Queen. And this Queen wrote Word and Object back in the 1960s. And he presented the idea that there was no such as equivalence in the translation. And it doesn't matter what the existence of that equivalence about word for word or phrase for phrase or sentence for sentence. Okay, then we have Eugene Nida, and Eugene Nida, the authority on the Bible translation. He wrote the book, The Theory and Practice of Translation, and he says that the words were labels, or the words are labels, but the meaning comes from a higher source. Okay, so the Bible translator should learn what the message is from, and only comes from a higher and divine source. Then we have another author, that is Willis Barmstone, and also Willis Barmstone in this Poetic of Translation, he wrote about the Jewish text to the Christian way of thinking. And in this case, all the place names or the proper names and so on were very important to this person. Also, the Psalms, according to this author, were love songs from Egypt and were not meant to be spiritual, he said. And all the thing without changing the iota will disappear in the Middle Ages. So these authors were the translators that believed that fidelity to this translation were using important things that were possible for translate. We are going to see the methodologies, the ELT methodologies about translation, about the history of translation. And we know that translation is the basis of teaching for a very long time, but also these translations were the key of elements for the grammar translation method. Okay, so was very classical method to teach Greek and Latin, because was that the way, the rules, okay, and the vocabulary. We have another methods of how to the history of translation for the English language teaching. And we have the direct or natural method. And this method was established in Germany and in France around the 1900s. And this was, this method have problem associated with the grammar translation method, okay? So the learners avoid using the learner's native language to use only the target language. Then we have the audiolingual method, and this method tried to teach the language directly without using the first language. Also, we have in the humanistic methodologies, we have the silent way method. So the teacher only said, and you will repeat. The student was only an object for the target language. And the final was from the communicative approaches. It came the total physical response. And this total physical response method was, or has to do with the movement and how to teach in the way that the learners can be able to move and to play with the language. We have the translatability, and we have 4 authors. Leonard Bloomfield said that translation only can be used to translate scientific text. Mario Wondruska said that it was impossible to translate all completely word by word, okay, without knowing the meaning completely. Valentin Garcia Yerba, it said that it was difficult. Yes, it was a difficult task, but it was not possible. And for Octavio Paz, it was possible to translate if we can mix all the ingredients of sound and significance. And for all the last 3, because they are writers of poetry. Then we have some objections to using translation. We have the learners and we have the teachers. And for learners, they cannot develop the communicative skills. So when they want to develop these skills, well, it may not be suitable for all of the students. And for the teachers, well, we have skills bound together, that is reading and writing. And also translation is a time-consuming and difficult. But as teachers, we have to be better than the students to translate or to teach translation. Okay, what are the benefits of translating? Well, the translation is a real-time life. It's a natural activity, as we can live, because we live in a global environment. And also we can use translation in groups, can be encouraged by learners to discuss the meaning and use of the language. And thank you for watching my video. The references are there in the British Council and the Universidad de Expro book that we use for this video. So thank you very much.